warm welcome to our MEDtalk. I'm Sri Jayewardenepura, and I'm the president of the University of Colombo Clinical Society. We are an undergraduate student society based at the Faculty of Medicine, and we provide a platform for our students to harness and supplement their growing clinical knowledge and aim to create a well-rounded junior doctor, armed with the soft skills and innovative thinking needed to navigate a fast-changing medical landscape. Today's talk is part of a series of monthly MEDtalks hosted by us. Through this series, the Society invites game changers and pioneers, men and women on the front lines of change, to come and deliver a short talk which serves to inspire as well as educate the next generation. Our talk this evening would be an update on COVID-19, the various mutations, strains, and variants, and the impact of all of this. This talk is tailored to an undergraduate medical student audience and was highly requested by our members. With Sri Lanka currently in the midst of yet another wave, we believe this topic to be especially timely. This talk would be followed by a Q&A session broken down into two parts as follows. The first would be moderated by us and consists of a selection of questions that the participants were told to submit on registration. And for the second part and the remainder of our time this evening, we would be opening the floor for questions. Our speaker this evening does not need a lengthy introduction. She's been at the forefront of controlling the current COVID-19 pandemic from the outset. She's actively involved in identification and analysis of new variants and strains of COVID-19 and serves on many national expert committees tasked with controlling this outbreak. She's a professor in the Department of Immunology and Molecular Medicine at the Faculty of Medical Sciences at the University of Sri Jayewardenepura, and we are very grateful to Professor Neelika Malavige for accepting our invitation and taking time off her busy schedule to spend the next hour or so with us. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to invite Professor Malavige for her talk. Madam, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that introduction and especially the invitation. It's actually quite an honor to talk to medical students from the university where I studied. And I don't know if this is an inspirational talk at all, or you'll be inspired or how you feel, but it's a very realistic, I would say it's a very realistic talk and where we stand right now. And I'm afraid we have to face a reality. So I'll try to be as simple as possible because I was told that in the clinical society you have students from year 3 to year 5. So I'll try to make sure that you understand, hopefully. Now, I'll just get my pointer out. Okay, so this is where we are right now. So I have just put some countries, only 3 countries, because just to make sure that the chart is not too crowded. So where are we now? So because we have to compare apples with apples and not apples with oranges, a best way to actually find out how we are doing is to find out the number of confirmed cases per million population. So we know that India was doing pretty bad some time ago with around 300 cases per 1 million population. But now the caseload is decreasing to about 275,000 cases per day. And currently, as of now, our number of cases per 1 million is higher than India, and our number of cases per million population is one of the highest in the world. We are lagging behind Nepal and, of course, Latin America. So we are not in a good position as far as the number of new confirmed cases per million. But of course, somebody can argue that India is not testing and we are testing. So I will come to that as well, how we are doing with that. And when we come to the number of deaths, per million population, this is as of yesterday. I know our death rates are over a period of time, but based on what is given out, India's death rates have drastically decreased from just over 3 per million population. So both India and Sri Lanka sort of more or less at the same point right now, with our number of cases sort of equal to what India is experiencing. They are reporting around 2,700 cases per day, which I believe is a gross underestimate. I believe that our cases are recorded and reported, hopefully. Now, all of these, now, when in the initial graph, when I said that our number of cases is way above India's number of cases per million, of course, it could be because India is not testing. So, but there are other ways of finding out whether the actual reflection of our number of cases. Now we are reporting, I believe, like 3,000 something cases per year, per day. So what is the actual number of cases? So a good measure is the positivity rates. So I'm sorry if this is not very clear. If you look at Latin America and certain countries in Latin America, they have a very large epidemic going on with still about 2,000 something people dying every day, and their test positivity rate is over 30%. And of course, Nepal is also having around 30% positivity rate. In Sri Lanka, as of 31st of May, it is around 13.8, which is actually higher than India. So of the number of tests that India does, the positivity rates are less than Sri Lanka. So the fact that our positivity rates are very high, which is 13.8, shows that we actually have a large number of cases in the out there which we are not picking up. And so you can see all other countries in Europe, and although they have reporting a high number, their testing numbers are also far higher. And if you look at this graph, so I just, again, not to mess up the graph too much, I picked up only certain countries, and India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Thailand. And so in Bangladesh and India, the positivity rates were very high. So for instance, in India, this is from January, mind you, at one point, the positivity rates are around 23% in India, which have now fallen less than 10%. In Sri Lanka, we sort of have the same caseload, around 2,000 something, 3,000, something like that. But over the time, our positivity rates have increased from like mid-April from like 2% or less than that to currently 14.8% as of yesterday. So our positivity rates have gradually gone up exponentially, although the number of cases have not gone up in a similar manner, which means that our positivity rates, the number of individuals out there, we are not picking up a large number. So that is where we stand. So this is the situation report of the WHO, which I believe you can get it up from the web. And all the countries, most of the countries in our region, the Southeast Asian region, we have an upward trend. So this is Sri Lanka, Nepal, so many countries, and India, of course, has managed to bend its curve after a very long lockdown. And so it is sort of not so happy times for anybody, and a lot of people are having difficulties. Now, more than that, from the news, we hear lockdowns in every country. Malaysia, Vietnam, Australia, and if we take countries like Vietnam and Thailand, those were countries doing extremely well, who were not affected by COVID all this time, and these countries are currently having a lockdown. And you have this other news like Vietnam showing a hybrid of India and UK strains. So is it a hybrid? Do we have new strains? What is going on? Are we facing a doom? And then, of course, vaccination is the final answer. But then news items saying that COVID-19 vaccines are probably less effective in preventing transmission than symptoms. So will this disease be transmitted? Keep on transmitting whatever measures we take. And of course, a Nature feature article on 5 reasons why COVID herd immunity is probably impossible. So whatever we do, whatever vaccines we have, is a good article to read why COVID herd immunity is probably impossible with whatever vaccine you have. So given all that, we are in a very in a gloom. It's a gloomy situation. You don't know what's the future. Are we going to be there forever like this? And the questions I think as young people, all of you are facing, I mean, this is your youth. When will life be normal again? And you can get on with your life, your studies. Will someone I know or love get COVID and die? Okay? I mean, people always think that something won't happen to me and I'm always immune to something. But will it actually happen to me? And when will this likely to end? So what I'll be talking about is, of course, about variants. Why does it matter? Why do you need to know about variant? And does it affect vaccine efficacy? So I will try to explain all this. I hope you can see my pointer. So this is a coronavirus, and it is called a coronavirus because it is has a crown-like appearance with the spike protein sticking out. And this is a magnified image of the coronavirus spike protein with this groove here. This is the ACE2 receptor. Okay, so the spike protein binds to the ACE2 receptor like that, and that's how it enters the cell. Okay, so this is a nice fit to the ACE2 receptor, and it enters the cell by binding to this receptor. So how can we stop binding? Of course, antibodies. Now, when we talk about antibodies, we have the coronavirus is a big virus. I mean, as far as the RNA virus is concerned. So when somebody has COVID or is immunized with a vaccine, the COVID vaccine, which might be the whole virus like the Sinopharm, or it might be something like the spike protein only, like AstraZeneca or Pfizer. So if it's just a spike protein vaccine or whatever vaccine, or after natural infection, you develop antibodies to various parts. You develop antibodies to this part of the spike protein, the receptor binding domain, the intraimmunology domain. So just because you have antibodies, it doesn't necessarily mean you get antibodies to the right region of the spike protein. Now, I will explain again. So here is the ACE2 receptor. So this needs to bind here to cause infection. So the only way you can prevent infection is by having an antibody that prevents this binding or this receptor binding domain bind to the ACE2 receptor. So the antibody should be against this part, and just because you have antibodies against other regions of the virus, it is not going to prevent the receptor binding domain engaging with the ACE2 receptor. So the antibodies that prevent this receptor binding domain of the spike protein binding to the ACE2 receptor are called neutralizing antibodies. So when you have these antibodies, these neutralizing antibodies, these antibodies bind to the receptor binding domain of the spike protein so that it can't bind to the ACE2 receptor, and then you don't get infected. So when somebody says that you're antibody positive after a vaccine or after a natural infection, the protection level differs, and the protection level depends on the presence of these neutralizing antibodies. So this is the very important thing I want you to get. It's the neutralizing antibodies that are important, not just the mere presence of any antibody. Now, if you are a virus, so to understand infection, it's always think about how your opponent thinks if you're going to win a battle. So if you're a smart virus, and if from the virus's point of view, the thing it wants to do is spread. So if there are naturally infected individuals or individuals who have got vaccinated and they have got neutralizing antibodies, then the virus can't bind to the ACE2 receptor. So in that case, what the virus needs to do is change certain proteins so that the neutralizing antibodies can't bind to the spike protein, the receptor binding domain of the spike protein. So this is exactly what variants are doing. Okay? So the variants evade recognition by the neutralizing antibodies. They develop mutations in critical sites where neutralizing antibodies bind to, so that the neutralizing antibodies can't bind properly. The other thing that they can do is change proteins so that their affinity to the ACE2 receptor increases. So these are the two major things that these variants do. They get better at fitting with the ACE2 receptor, the binding affinity is higher, and the other one is the neutralizing, they escape recognition by neutralizing antibodies. So this is, I mean, a virus, the virus has a lot of proteins. So this is just the spike protein. And most of the mutations are in the receptor binding domain, more, and some in other areas also. So this is the receptor binding domain of the virus that binds to the ACE2 receptor. So in the major variants, you have mutations in these areas so that then the neutralizing antibodies can't bind, won't effectively bind to the receptor binding domain, and so will not neutralize this virus. So mutations in the receptor binding domain of the spike protein can affect virus binding and affect the neutralizing antibodies. And of course, that's viruses that are better at binding to the ACE2 receptor, have a higher affinity to the ACE2 receptor, displace other viruses. So this is data, our own sequencing data of Sri Lanka. So if I just talk you through it in the initial stages, this is week 10 last year. We didn't have many SARS-CoV-2 infections, so we didn't have the opportunity to sequence a lot of viruses because there were not many infections in the first place. But we know that last year around October, we got this Brandix cluster. And and when we actually sequenced the virus, we found that this particular virus was unique to Sri Lanka. In other words, it was called a Sri Lankan variant. Even if you go to the websites where all these variants are named, this was called B1411 Sri Lankan lineage. And this was the only virus there until quite recently. So in late December, we saw these other variants coming in, but these were in quarantine. So this red is the B117, now named the alpha variant by the WHO. In other words, the UK variant, this red one. So this was in the quarantine facility, and you can see the UK variant again isolated in the quarantine facility. But somehow it gets into the community late March or early April, and the rest is history. As you can see, it completely displays our B1411, the virus of the Sri Lankan lineage, and you can see the UK variant has emerged. This is because the binding affinity of this alpha variant is much stronger to the ACE2 receptor than the Sri Lankan variant. So obviously, it is better adapted to transmit, and so it's real life data of survival of the fittest. And so this evolutionary advantage of the alpha variant has made it able to spread, overcoming and completely displacing our own one. Now, of course, there are hundreds and hundreds of SARS-CoV-2 variants, okay, because the virus mutates every day, and most of these variants are completely insignificant. So they have various names on where they are, and so you have B111, 411, 412, so-called so many variants, but those are not really worrisome at all. So just because you have various variants, you don't need to worry about it. So, but then the WHO names certain variants as variants of concern. Now, the variants of concern are those that increase transmission, okay, are more able to transmit than the original Wuhan variant. They can increase disease severity. They can escape neutralizing antibodies or evade diagnosis by PCR. So if you take the alpha variant or the UK variant, it has a higher transmission ability, increased disease severity, evade diagnosis by PCR, spike protein detection, and escape neutralization by some antibody, some escape, but not that much, which I'll explain. So these are the 4 variants of concern named by the WHO. They changed this nomenclature 2 days ago and call this alpha, beta, alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. The first 4 letters of the Greek alphabet. So in Sri Lanka, we have the B117. This beta variant or the South African variant has so far been detected only in quarantine facilities. We have not detected the Brazilian variant at all. And this Indian variant or the Delta variant, we have only detected in quarantine facilities as of now. So everything is as of now. Things can change every week. Now, just to tell you how widespread these are. So this is the alpha variant or the UK variant B117, and as of 25th of May, it is present in 149 countries. In other words, it is the dominant variant responsible for COVID in most countries in the world. This is the South African variant. Okay, so again, it is present in 102 countries. In Sri Lanka also, although it is highlighted here, it is only in quarantine facilities. This Brazilian variant, although it evades immunity, it hasn't spread that much as other variants. And this is the Delta variant or the Indian variant, again spreading widely within a very, very short time period. It was only identified in India late February, and it has just spread like wildfire, responsible for the majority of upcoming outbreaks in most regions of the world. Although Sri Lanka is highlighted, we have only detected it in a quarantine facility. Now, how do variants affect transmission dynamics? The main reason is because of the increased affinity. Cells which have the ACE2 receptor can be affected with lower viral load. So even with a lower number of viruses, the infection is possible because of increased affinity. And because and more cells can be infected, so higher viral loads are produced by infected cells. So you have higher viral loads in the respiratory secretions of infected individuals. So because of that, the transmission is more. And of course, these mutations escape immunity, which means that they can reinfect individuals who already have had COVID, and they can infect individuals who are fully vaccinated. So that is escape in immunity. Now, just about transmissibility. Now, I'm trying to tell you something which I think you have learned from community medicine. So I'm not an epidemiologist or a community physician expert in this, but I'll try to take you through, because otherwise I can't explain this. So R0 is a value which is derived from how many people an infected person infects. So if an infected person infects 2 people, the R0 is taken as 2. So that the R0 value is derived from the duration of infectivity and the likelihood of transmission. So on day 0, let's say if we have 1,000 cases and the R0 value is 1.1, by 60 days, there will be 25,000 cases. So just by a R0 of 1.1, in 60 days, 1,000 cases turn into 25,000 cases. So this is for you to understand how things evolve. And so as far as the R0 value of COVID, so this is again what I told you, how the epidemics progress. So if patient 0 infects 2 people, these 2 people infect 2 more people, and so on. So this is how the epidemic progresses. And for COVID, the R0 value, if no interventions are taken, is thought to be around 2 to 2.5. It is more than influenza and also more than Ebola, but it's far less than certain airborne infections like measles, and also far less than certain other infections like polio, rhinovirus, and smallpox. But although the original variant has a transmissibility of a certain R0 value, because of the higher affinity of this UK variant to the ACE2 receptor, the R0 value is increased by a median of 0.5. So just the R0 value increasing of a 0.5 value drastically changes the transmission dynamics. So that causes this 0.5 increase in R0 value significantly increases the transmission dynamics. So this is again our data, how things have evolved over time. And this is Sri Lanka. So our R0 value is around 1.2, something like that. India and Nepal and Pakistan have managed to get it down. So if the R0 value is less than 1, then the epidemic gradually declines. So the important thing is getting the R0 value below 1. So this is a really good website you can go to, Our World in Data. It is a free website, and you can do a lot of games. I mean, not games, sorry. I mean, a lot of data manipulation and look at all the data. And it's a very fun website to understand what is going on. So I would strongly recommend you go into this website, Our World in Data, and you can get all this real-time data of what is happening in Sri Lanka and the rest of the world. And so about the Indian variant, so I just told you that the UK variant is pretty bad. It increased the R0 value by 0.5. It is highly transmissible, so much more transmissible, 50% more transmissible than the original Wuhan variant. But what about this Indian variant or the Delta variant? So this is data from UK, and if you can see this the transmission curves of the other variants versus the Indian variant. The Indian variant, the data, the Public Health Institute of England yesterday also put out data. So the Indian variant is 50 to 70% more transmissible than the UK variant. So I just showed you that because of the UK variant is so transmissible that our so-called Sri Lankan lineage was completely wiped out. But the Indian variant is 50 to 70% more transmissible than the UK variant. So in countries where the Indian variant has been introduced, it is wiping out the UK variant. So this is another example. So this is in India, where they actually had the UK variant dominant for some time, and the Indian variant just comes and just displaces everything. In the UK, again, they have other variants, and the UK variant is still dominant, but as you can see, the Indian variant is rapidly becoming dominant in the US also. So the Indian variant is picking up, and it is the most transmissible variant that we have currently. Now, about disease severity. So some variants actually increase disease severity. And as far as the B117 or the UK variant is concerned, it is shown to actually increase disease severity. Various studies put different values from about 30% to 50% increase in disease severity and mortality. And I think we are seeing that in Sri Lanka because all this time, for instance, in the so-called second wave that happened between October to February this year, which was largely seen in the CMC, a lot of people got COVID, but the proportion of individuals who got severe COVID and symptomatic COVID was less. And we do have the sort of seroprevalence data in the Colombo Municipal Council. So a large proportion have actually been infected, especially in the flat areas, which I'm certain Colombo 13, 14, 15 areas. A large proportion of people were actually infected, but didn't have much symptomatic infection. But we are seeing a drastic change right now with the introduction of the B117, where we are seeing a lot of symptomatic infection and severe disease. And but the problem is, again, apart from this Indian variant or the Delta variant being more transmissible than the UK variant, the early data is showing that it may be also associated with more severe disease. Now, will vaccines get us out of this mess? Okay, because I mean, I've been giving you a lot of bad news, but let's talk whether it's bad news or not. I'll go towards that. But will vaccines get us out of this mess? Now, I didn't put data from other countries because I think we have to again compare apples with apples. We can't compare Sri Lanka to the UK or to US because those are far developed than us. They have far more money than us. So let's talk about our region. So when we talk about our region, our vaccination rates are not as great as India, of course, because 12% of Indians have received at least one dose of a vaccine, but they are manufacturing their own vaccine, of course. But we are not doing too bad. We've got like 8% of our population receiving at least one dose, and we are far ahead of many other countries in the region. So although we can keep on complaining, I mean, vaccines are actually short of supply, and the whole world is trying to get hold of vaccines. So the countries which actually finished vaccination, their populations are ahead, are the countries who have a lot of money. So it's not that, so that is an important thing I wanted to highlight here. Now, about vaccine efficacy. So before you look on the right-hand side, I just want you to talk you through this left-hand side. So these orange bars are the vaccine efficacy against the initial Wuhan strain. So you can see that the Moderna vaccine efficacy is around 94%, Pfizer around 95%, AstraZeneca between 90 to 62%, okay? Johnson & Johnson about 60 to 72%, Novavax around 89%. So this is the orange bars are the original Wuhan strain, okay? Then the white bars are the UK variant. Okay, so Moderna doesn't have a difference. Pfizer does have a difference, but they haven't put the data. I don't know here. This is what I could find. The AstraZeneca vaccine efficacy falls a little bit from 90% to overall 75%. There doesn't seem to be much difference in other vaccines for the UK variant. So basically, vaccines work against the UK variant or the Alpha variant. And so this is the South African variant where the vaccine efficacy drastically falls for the South African variant because of in the South African variants, there are mutations in critical sites where the neutralizing antibodies bind to. So there, in the South African variant, the neutralizing antibodies can't stop the receptor binding domain binding to the H2 receptor very well. So this is the problem. Now, okay, coming to this. Now, this is something important I wanted to show. If you look at this top graph, so this is the Pfizer vaccine, which was shown to be the most, only Pfizer and AstraZeneca was compared against the efficacy against the Indian variant. So this is the wild type or the original variant. So after 2 doses of the vaccine, this is the sort of neutralizing antibodies you have. And when you look at the neutralizing antibodies of Pfizer for the UK variant, there is a slight drop from the original variant, as you can see. For the South African variant, so this is a log scale, by the way. Okay, the y-axis is a log scale. So for the South African variant, there is a further drop, and the immune evasion effect of the South African Indian variant or the Delta variant is similar to the South African variant for the Pfizer vaccine. So the Pfizer vaccine is currently the most effective vaccine against these variants that evade immunity. So the Indian variant is a worry actually because the immune evasion is similar to the South African variant for the Pfizer vaccine and other data. I'm not showing all the data. So it behaves like the South African variant as far as immune evasion is concerned, but is far transmissible than any other variant we have. And this is, of course, the immune evasion with 1 and 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. So with 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine, you have good neutralizing antibody levels, but just 1 dose of the Pfizer vaccine doesn't seem to have much effect against the Indian variant at all. So as far as the Pfizer vaccine or basically any vaccine out there, 1 dose does not seem to have much or actually any effect against the Indian variant. So this is, so based on our data, because we are doing the CMC, PCRs and several other places, so far we only seem to have the UK variant in the community. If we do get the Indian variant into the country, you can imagine what happens. It will displace the UK variant very fast because it is more transmissible than the UK variant. And it, of course, evades immunity. So infected people will get reinfected. And of course, people who have had 1 dose of a vaccine, whatever vaccine, there won't be much effectiveness of that vaccine, 1 dose, whatever vaccine it is. And of course, even after 2 doses, there will be some immune evasion. So is this the end? Okay. So now this is just what happened in Singapore. Singapore is under lockdown as well. And in Singapore, of course, they vaccinated everybody in the airport because they were thinking of opening the airport and especially because of the transit flights. And in the Singapore airport, everybody had received 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine, which is the most effective vaccine against variants. So, so they have actually wonderfully mapped the outbreak, tracing every case back in the community to where it originated from. So every case in the community originated to the airport, originated to the people in the airport who were vaccinated, fully vaccinated, 2 weeks after receiving 4 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. So basically, these individuals in the airport who received 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine got infected with the Indian variant. They were asymptomatic, or some of them were mildly symptomatic, and they transmitted to people at home. And that's how the outbreak went in Singapore. So the most important thing here, vaccines protect the person who got the vaccine. Okay, because everybody who got the infection after, the Indian variant after getting the vaccine, nobody got severe disease. Some people just got mild symptoms. So vaccines protect you, but they don't protect other people. Okay, I mean, no vaccines. I mean, if you take the MMR vaccine, it protects you. You can't expect the MMR vaccine to protect the other people at home. Okay, so this is one important thing. And so, of the 28 staff that were infected in the airport, 19 people with immunized with Pfizer or Moderna, which are the most vaccines which are most effective against these variants. But so what is the future for us? Okay, so there are two types of vaccines. So if we can just concentrate on the top figure here, so if you have a vaccines that prevents disease and infection, after the vaccine, you have a reduction in severe disease, you have a reduction in moderate infection, individuals showing mild symptoms, and all these categories. Basically, you drastically reduce individuals for infected. But if you have a vaccines that prevent disease but not infection, which what the COVID vaccines are doing, at least the ones that we have out there, all the vaccines, they reduce the proportion of people who have, they increase the proportion of people who are asymptomatic, but decrease the proportion of people who develop severe symptoms. In other words, all the vaccines out there protect against severe disease, but severe disease and death to a certain extent, largely against symptomatic infection, but not asymptomatic infection. Because when the WHO, when they evaluate vaccines, and when they say a vaccine is effective, the efficacy rates of the vaccines are against symptomatic infection and not against asymptomatic infection. So when we say all these 95% effective, 91% effective, that is against symptomatic infection. So all the vaccines, whatever the variant, they reduce severe disease and death. And mostly people, even with the Indian variant, get asymptomatic infection and you get mild infection. Some people do get fever, but I'm sure all of you have had a flu-like illness before. And so it reduces the symptoms to that level. So now, when we look at the future of COVID, given that we have COVID in all countries in the world, and even in countries like Australia, which have their borders strictly controlled and have such a test, trace, and isolate strategy, they're still having these quarantine escapes and transmission in the community. And of course, that is countries like Australia, which, but in most other countries, COVID is widespread. It is endemic. So when an infection becomes endemic, it is to eradicate it. It is very difficult. So will we get new variants? Yes. I mean, very likely we are going to get new variants. The more transmission out there, we are going to get it very soon. So unless we vaccinate everybody on Earth very fast, then we can prevent variants. But unless we vaccinate everybody on Earth as fast as we can, and I'm talking about within 3 months, which is impossible, we will get new variants emerging in some country, especially in countries where there is a high rate of transmission. And will vaccines work against any new variant? Yes, very highly likely. So any new variant, the vaccines will work. They will prevent severe disease and death, but not asymptomatic infection. And some people will get mild infection. So even in Sri Lanka, just to let you know of the data, and not to scare you, but accept the reality, healthcare workers who have had both doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine, and 2 weeks or 1 month after both doses of the vaccine, we have some individuals being infected. Most of them are asymptomatic. Some of them do have symptoms like a sore throat or fever. And that is not a vaccine failure. You can have sore throats and fevers. So will we need boosters? Possibly for high-risk groups. Now, let's put it this way. Now, let's say all of you are young individuals, and let's say you have had both doses of the vaccine. You get infected. So you will actually, let's say you get infected in 3 months. you will get a natural booster. In other words, you will get a mild infection, maybe sore throat or asymptomatic, you will get a natural booster. So, from the community, people will get natural boosters like we do get for influenza. So we get influenza boosters every year, naturally. I'm talking about people who are not vaccinated. We get influenza infections every year. Most individuals in all communities do get influenza infections. The influenza rapidly mutates far rapidly than the SARS-CoV-2. So there are so many different influenza variants. And in fact, you have to develop an influenza vaccine every year. But is it given to the whole world? No, it is only given to high-risk group of individuals called the flu shot in developed countries and even in Sri Lanka to high-risk individuals. But so after immunizing all the adults in the world, not just in America or UK, but in the whole world, then if immunized individuals do get infected, they will get mild infection. And will you get infected during the next 6 months or maybe a year? Yes, very likely. Will I get infected? Yes, very likely. And will you die? Okay, highly unlikely. Okay, I mean, we'll get infected. All of us will get infected within the next year. I think it's difficult to stop this unless you're going to be in the house and sort of be in a bubble. It's difficult to prevent infection. But from all the data out there, people who have had a vaccine and got infected, or infected and then got a vaccine, have got really high levels of neutralizing antibodies, so you probably won't get infected again. So, I mean, the ideal thing is not to get infected, but in a realistic world, you might get infected and maybe get mild fever, a little bit of a sore throat, and that's the end. So, I would like to take any questions and end by mentioning all these things. And I think it's time to accept reality, vaccinate as many individuals as fast as possible. So I think we have to, that is what is needed right now, to vaccinate as many individuals as fast as possible to get out of this epidemic. Otherwise, the vaccines are the way forward. Thank you.
So I would like to take this opportunity to thank Professor Neelika Malavige for that comprehensive talk on today's theme. So as promised, we will now be moving on to a Q&A session. And as we explained earlier, this session will consist of two parts. The first part will be a structured part, which will be moderated by me. And of course, we will open an open forum for our participants here today to raise their questions at this, the live event. So, Madam, I will now be moving on to the structured Q&A session, and I have actually divided these questions into three parts. So there are questions on the vaccines, there are questions on the variants, and there are questions on the clinical presentations. So my first question for you today is whether the vaccines in any way, are vaccinations in any way the cause of the current mutations?
No. Okay, so that's a good question. So the current mutations. So I think the vaccination started in US and UK. Those were the first countries to start vaccination. After basically they started on the 14th of December. So if you look at the UK variant, it emerged in September. South African variant again emerged somewhere in October, November. The Brazilian variant again emerged in somewhere around that time. So all these three variants of concern emerged way before vaccination took place. And the Indian variant, now when the Indian variant emerged, that was in February, and in February, India had already vaccinated, I think, about 1% of their population. You see, so 1%, one dose, just 1% of the population, so that is a negligible amount. So vaccines did not contribute to emergence of the variants of concern that we are seeing right now.
Thank you, Madam. And my next question is whether vaccination can lead to more severe disease or even possibly death. And this, of course, comes with this statement that has been circulating, the statement made by Nobel laureate Luc Montagnier regarding antibody-dependent enhancement, which is classically described for the dengue virus. So, Madam, we would like to know whether this is a possibility with regards to COVID.
Yes, so I can't give a short answer. So you hopefully don't mind me going on. So first of all, the antibody-dependent enhancement in dengue is because of the antibodies binding to the Fc receptor, like Fc receptor bearing cells and infective macrophages, monocyte dendritic cells. So the SARS-CoV-2 virus doesn't infect like that. Now, coming to what the Nobel Prize winner said, I mean, he's a Nobel Prize winner, but with age, I mean, everybody ages, right? So, and certain things happen with age, irrespective of how you were. I mean, let's say Usain Bolt. I mean, Usain Bolt is the fastest man on earth, but when he's going to hit, I don't know, a little bit later, he's not going to be the fastest man on earth because the simple reason that he aged. So while your physical functions deteriorate with age, your mental functions also sometimes the way you interpret things can sort of deteriorate. So if you look at his other statements, he's been an anti-vaxxer for quite a while. So he's been leading the anti-vax movement for the last 6 years. He's one of the spokespersons for the anti-vax movements, not for COVID, but there are so many vaccines out there. So he's been a very strong advocate of the anti-vaccine movement. And he's 88 years. I mean, there are brilliant 88-year-olds, but again, there are some 88-year-olds who sort of have a little bit deterioration of their higher functions. And now coming to antibody-dependent enhancement, now I just showed you, I don't know if you understood that you have different types of antibodies. So the antibodies that bind to the receptor binding domain actually are neutralizing, and you want those type of antibodies. But not every, but people develop different types of antibodies. Some people, the majority of antibodies would be to the receptor binding domain, and there are some people. Now there's a recent paper in one of the best journals in the world showing that if people develop antibodies to a particular region of the spike protein, actually they can enhance, not in the way that it happens in dengue, but in a completely different mechanism, which I can't explain right now. So a minor proportion of individuals do develop these antibodies, but even before vaccination, some people do have these antibodies apparently because of previous infection with other things that lead to severe disease. So, but with higher proportion of neutralizing antibodies, which happens by getting the second dose of the vaccine, it's a balance between neutralizing antibodies, the good and the bad. So when you have a lot of good things, it neutralizes the bad things.
Thank you, Madam. And our final question regarding vaccines is, Madam, a lot of us are receiving our booster doses after a period of delay. So I would like to know to what extent can we ensure the efficacy of a vaccine if the booster dose is delayed?
Well, can you define delay, please, if you don't mind?
Yes. So I mean, we don't know for certain what the gap is between two vaccines. So there have been various reports that the gap should be 4 weeks, and then it should be 6 weeks, and then it became 12 weeks. So I would like
you received,
because a lot of
you received it when?
Yes, madam. So the medical students received, yes. So we received it after a gap of about 3 months, I would say about 2 months, 2 to 3 months. So
12 weeks.
Yes.
The recommended time period, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then the common populace, madam, they are concerned, especially those who received the AstraZeneca vaccine.
Yes. So I'll answer that. So it's like this. So the studies showed that the efficacy of the AstraZeneca vaccine was highest when the gap between the two doses was 12 weeks. Okay. When the gap was 12 weeks, that was the highest efficacy, which was around 81%. So this is why then all countries, including Sri Lanka, increased the gap between two doses to 12 weeks. But India, Canada, and France actually increased the gap between the two doses for 16 weeks. And the reason that India increased the gap between the two doses for 16 weeks is because, and even Canada, was because that it is better to immunize a large population with the existing vaccines, giving partial immunity, versus a few people having full immunity. Okay, so because what has been seen over and over again, even with the UK variant, the South African variant, and so on, even partial immunity protects against hospitalization and death. So in studies done in the UK with the UK variant, when the UK variant was there, studies done in Scotland with the Pfizer and AstraZeneca, one dose of Pfizer and AstraZeneca reduced about hospitalizations about 80% and also death, quite a significant about 90-something percentage of reduction in death just with one single dose of AstraZeneca and Pfizer. So this was the basis of immunizing a large population so that a large population will be protected versus a small population. But now, as you would have noticed, the UK has decreased the gap between two doses to 6 to 8 weeks. Now, this is because of the Indian variant. Now they have the Indian variant, and now for the Indian variant, there doesn't seem to be much protection at all with the single dose. Okay, so when the UK variant was there, they increased the gap between the doses because one dose was fine, okay, to reduce severe disease and death. But with the Indian variant, one dose doesn't seem to be doing much. So because of that, in the UK, they have decreased the gap between the two doses, which sounds sensible, so that with two doses, you get more protection earlier. And of course, they have a large proportion of the population have anyway been vaccinated. So when you decide all these vaccination policies, and you have to look at, okay, what are we trying to achieve now? Are we trying to prevent death and severe disease in a vast majority as fast as possible, so that the health systems are not overwhelmed and people don't die? And of course, it depends on the variant. So if you have a UK variant predominantly going around, then that sort of approach is safe. So in India, that approach is not safe, because in India, of course, it's the Indian variant going around. So increasing the gap between two doses is not going to provide much immunity to the people who get a single dose. But the countries which have a UK variant going around predominantly, they can take the approach. So actually, you have to consider a lot of things when making these decisions.
Thank you, madam. And now, madam, I would like to move on to the questions on the variants. So we will I will be handling 2 more questions, and then I'll be opening the floor. So, madam, you are very comprehensive about the changes in the rate of transmission and the possibility of severe disease. So has there been any change in the incubation periods of the viruses, and will this affect future quarantine durations as well?
Yes, so the incubation period. So because of the higher viral loads associated with highly transmissible viruses like the UK virus, there's not much data about the Indian variant as yet, because the studies are still ongoing. So, but I can talk about the UK variant, now called alpha variant, of course. So for the alpha variant, the incubation period is slightly less than the original variant, because if you have a higher viral load infecting you, then you are more likely to develop symptoms earlier, symptomatic earlier. And again, preliminary studies from other countries are showing that the infective viral shedding could be longer. So, for instance, with the Wuhan original variant, somebody with mild infection was only infected till about 7-8 days. But with the UK variant, some people can be shedding infective viral particles even for 10-11 days. But of course, our quarantine goes on to 14 days. But this is only for mild and asymptomatic people. People with severe disease can shed the infective viral particles for even 21-30 days.
Thank you, madam. Madam, and then my final question is on the clinical presentation. So if you could just tell us, there's been any change in the clinical picture? And I think there was a lot of hysteria about these isolated cases of macroglossia. And we just would like to know,
yes. Okay. So the clinical, So the clinic, I'll talk about macroglossia first. Okay. Because I mean, it was a media hype. So macroglossia was reported in 9 patients of 33 million patients in US. Okay, so out of 33 million, 9 people got macroglossia. So I mean, you can do the maths and find out. I mean, that's like less than okay, I mean, whatever. Okay, I mean, it's much less than 1 in a million. And of those 9 people, all 9 people had been intubated. Okay, I mean, a lot more than 9 people were intubated in US. And of those 9 people, 7 people were of the ethnic Afro-American ethnicity. So now they're wondering whether, apart from just intubation, whether it is to do with the ethnicity as well. Because if you have just nine people with macroglossia and 7 of them are of that Afro-American ethnicity, whether it is some genetic thing playing there. So that is about macroglossia. So I don't think you need to worry about it when the incidence is like 9 in 33 million. Okay, so about the clinical presentation has not changed. It does not change for any of the variants at all. It's the same clinical presentation. It's just that there is a shift in the proportion of people who develop asymptomatic to symptomatic and symptomatic to severe disease. So it's just the shift in the severity, but not any change in the symptoms.
Okay, thank you, madam. So that ends our structured Q&A session, and now we will be opening the floor for any other questions. You are you're free to unmute yourselves and directly ask your questions. So we have also kept the chat forum open, so you can submit your questions there for everyone to see, and we'll be happy to answer your questions.
So do you want me to answer the questions in the chat? There are 3 questions in the chat right now.
Yes.
Okay,
sure,
so I'll start with the first question. Is eradication impossible? Means it's going to persist for long years. Okay, so long years in the sense now if I just ask you a realistic question, do you think eradication is possible? Okay, I mean, what do you think? Okay, I'm going to put the question back to you. And now, I'll just put you a very philosophical question. I don't know whether this is the right audience to ask a philosophical question because you are like really young people. Okay, but if we take an infection like chickenpox, one day chickenpox came to Earth, right? So, and chickenpox is, by the way, way more transmissible than COVID. The R0 value is like 10. Okay, so and we know that chickenpox, the mortality of chickenpox in old individuals is higher than COVID, mind you. So chickenpox would have come to Earth. I mean, not from alien birth, but have emerged on Earth one day. And then when it came, it would have killed a lot of people, isn't it? So it could have killed off all the people and then started infecting everybody. And then the whole population would have got immune one day. Okay, so when the whole population got immune one day, so when new people were born, in the case children, they would have got infected with chickenpox. But we know that childhood chickenpox mostly asymptomatic, isn't it? So as long as the older population, everybody older is immune for chickenpox, just because the younger people get chickenpox, it is fine, isn't it? So, and true that we have chickenpox vaccines, and chickenpox in some young people can be devastating. But basically, chickenpox in Western countries until recently, they had chickenpox parties. If a child had chickenpox, they had a party so that other kids would come in and then get the infection themselves, because that was how they got natural immunity in childhood. Okay, so likewise, if you look at COVID, unlike influenza and many other respiratory infections, children don't get severe COVID at all, like under 10 years in any country, unless they had some congenital abnormality or something going on. And now in Sri Lanka also, we have had several children with immune deficiencies, A-gamma globulinemia, hyper IgE syndrome. All these people also getting COVID, they were fine for some reason. Okay, I mean, and those are like severe immune deficiency syndromes. Those children also got COVID, they were fine. So basically, when children get COVID, they're fine. So if all the adult population is immunized, one day when it's endemic and just infects children, and adults are repeatedly infected every year. I mean, if you get repeated infections, it will be asymptomatic in adults. So it will be endemic and persist in the community. And yes, it won't go until you die, most likely. Yes. So if I answer the next question, let me see. Okay, I'm getting lots of questions now. Okay. Can vaccination be a stimulant to a rise of new variants? Now new variants didn't arise because of vaccines, but because of vaccines, will new variants arise? I'll give a very honest answer for that. Yes, if the vaccination process is very slow, Okay, if we have a partially immune population for a very long time, like, okay, let's say if we have 100 people, and let's say 10 people are immune, whereas 90 people are not, then there can be still transmission. And then the virus will try to reinfect the 10 people who are immune as well. So this is why vaccination process should be fast as possible. Okay, so the vaccine rollout has to be fast. Okay, so yes, more about the Sinopharm. So Sinopharm is a inactivated vaccine. So it is like the polio. I mean, we have a lot of inactivated vaccines, the polio vaccine and so on, influenza vaccine. So it induces immunity like all other inactivated vaccines do. And the clinical trials have shown efficacy rate of 79% for the original Wuhan variant dose. And Sinopharm and all other vaccines will have reduced efficacy for the South African and Indian variant. So that is going to happen. So that is not anything to do with the vaccine, inferiority of any vaccine. It's just the problem with the variant. Okay, does remdesivir show any benefit? Again, some clinical trials have shown benefit. I think it's the timing that is most important when giving antivirals. So, I think the differences in the trials could be because of that timing of giving remdesivir. So some trials have shown, and in some countries they are using, but again, the timing is critical, I think. In giving antivirals, you have to give it early. What is the relationship of the level of vitamin D and COVID for the progression of disease? Again, there are papers showing that having vitamin D deficiency when you have COVID increases disease severity. And they have trials showing that if you are vitamin D deficient, you're more likely to have severe COVID. But trials showing vitamin D as a treatment. Okay, so this is, if you're vitamin D insufficient, you can get COVID, severe COVID. But the trials on using vitamin D as a treatment option, the data is inconclusive. There is data for both sides. So I believe that Dr. Manelka is going to be doing a trial in Sri Lanka on vitamin D. So let's see. Okay, what is the efficacy of vaccination for immunosuppressed patients like kidney transplantation? So right now, there is no data anywhere for any of the vaccines, efficacy of vaccines for immunosuppressed patients. But all vaccines, because we don't have any live vaccines out there, so all the vaccines are either mRNA vaccines, vector vaccines, or inactivated vaccines, or protein-based vaccines. All of those vaccines are recommended to be given to immunosuppressed patients. And of course, immunosuppressed patients are unlikely to have the same degree of efficacy as an immunocompetent person. But then there would be some efficacy. So this is why even if the efficacy is reduced, something is better than nothing. So it is very important to give all immunosuppressed patients these vaccines, because they are the people who are likely to die, except for some reason, children with immunosuppressed, not immunosuppressed cancer, kids with cancer, because that is different. But congenital immune deficiencies, kids with congenital immune deficiencies, B-cell defects seem to be doing fine. That's a different story. What determines if the strain is more airborne? So now strains are not airborne. Okay, I mean it's the way the virus transmits doesn't depend on the variant. Okay, all variants are transmitted in the same manner. Okay, whether it's original Wuhan variant versus the Indian variant, they're transmitted in the same manner. So if you discuss about airborne transmission, this is something that happens in closed settings. So you have a like an air-conditioned room or poorly ventilated place. And a good example is the Palagoda fish market, where we had a rapid spread because it's a very poorly ventilated environment. So in such an environment, there'll be viruses in the air for a longer time period, and will get infected. So, but the problem is when the variants are highly transmissible, instead of, let's say, 10 viruses, 5 viruses might be enough to infect you. So So it's not that the viral transmission is less, it's just that certain variants are more transmissible. So in whatever method, it can be airborne droplet, the transmission is higher. So the next question, is it effective to mix and match different type of vaccines? So the data of mixing and matching Pfizer vaccines and Moderna vaccines with AstraZeneca vaccines are out. And so the data is very good. So if you mix and match AstraZeneca with Pfizer or Moderna, the efficacy is very good. So there is data there for mixing and matching AstraZeneca with Pfizer. So that doesn't mean that without data you can mix and match any vaccine. And if you mix AstraZeneca with Sinopharm, AstraZeneca with Sputnik, the efficacy rate is going to be increased or the same. Without data, we can't. I mean, it might be the same, might be better, but without data, we can't talk about those. But for the Pfizer and Moderna, the efficacy is very good with mixing and matching vaccines with the AstraZeneca. Okay, with the current knowledge of current variations, can we predict any future variations? So yes, I mean, the emergence of variants in the future would depend on the degree of transmission. So if we have intense transmission, more variants will emerge. So this is why we should try to reduce, I mean, we are not trying to eradicate it, but we are trying to actually reduce it to not just manageable levels, but actually, try to get rid of it as far as possible. Okay, so that is because if we have the virus transmitting in the community, variants will emerge. So we really have to reduce the transmission, and I mean, it's impossible to eradicate it, but we have to really, really try and reduce the transmission in the community, because variants will emerge, and this is going to be a huge problem. And the other thing is, at least we have everybody vaccinated, you see, and so it is important to vaccinate people as fast as possible. Okay, the next question, effective to mix and match vaccines. So that was asked. A certain deaths in certain people. Okay, what is the reason for recent deaths in certain people who have infected with the second time in Sri Lanka? So I don't know who died after being infected for the second time. Is this, I don't know if this is about, so this is, I don't know who answered it. I don't know if this is asked about the Hamudru. So can the person who asked this question clarify? Because I'm not aware of somebody who died after the second time. So if the person clarifies this, then I can explain. Is the Sinopharm vaccine effective against COVID variants? The Sinopharm vaccine will have the same efficacy against variants as of other vaccines. I mean, if you take the AstraZeneca, it is less effective against variants. Pfizer is less effective. Sinopharm will be less effective against variants. There's no reason why Sinopharm would be effective. Formation of blood clots have been found following infection and vaccination. Okay, so the blood clots following infection. So the pathophysiology of developing blood clots following infection is very different from the pathophysiology of blood clots following vaccination. So blood clots following vaccination is because of this, you see it after heparin. So that is because of developing antibodies against platelet factor 4, PF4. So you have anti-platelet PF4 antibodies, and that's the reason of thrombosis following the vaccination with AstraZeneca and also Johnson & Johnson. But as far as the thrombosis following COVID, I mean, that is a completely different mechanism. That is, we could go on about that, but then that's a complete topic, so I think I won't talk about that. Okay, what is the relationship between mucormycosis and COVID? So, I mean, we know that we have mucor around. I mean, it's especially in countries like India and Sri Lanka, which are hot and humid, we have a huge load of fungus around. And so sometimes we know that in countries like India and Sri Lanka, people misuse a lot of drugs. Okay, so if we take steroids like dexamethasone, the recovery trial and other clinical trials have shown that dexamethasone is effective in severe COVID. But the guidelines and the trial data show that it has no efficacy in people with mild COVID. It is only effective in people with moderate to severe COVID when they become oxygen dependent. So the timing of giving dexamethasone. So I believe what has happened in India, this is what I hear from my colleagues in India, is that everybody with COVID, I mean, a lot of people have diabetes also in India, like Sri Lanka, and diabetes itself predisposes to fungal infections. So all people who just had COVID started taking a lot of steroids. So when people start taking, I mean, because mind you, steroids knock out the antiviral response. So here in COVID, you want antiviral response to get rid of the virus. So when you give it early, you are knocking out that antiviral response. You are giving steroids to knock out the anti-inflammatory response that comes later. When you give it too early, you are knocking out the antiviral response. So you actually get more. You are messing things up. And apart from the antiviral response, you are knocking out your immune system. So then, on top of, if you have diabetes as well, then you can get mucormycosis. So this is why you have to use drugs as indicated, based on the available scientific data. Yeah. Okay, is it possible to get vaccines of different mechanisms of action as boosters in future? Yes. So you can have different vaccines. So I know all of you got the adenovirus vaccines. So maybe you can have the mRNA vaccines or inactivated vaccines or whatever vaccines in future. But the question is, would we need boosters and would everybody need boosters? I don't think young people would need boosters. This is my feeling. You can, I think people will get naturally infected more or less several times in the future. Does the current vaccine reduce transmission to any extent? Yes. Okay. So current vaccines do reduce transmission. It's like this. So if we have the original variant, the Wuhan variant, all vaccines reduce the viral load in the respiratory secretions. So let's say if you have, under normal circumstances, if you're infected, if you have 1,000 viruses in your respiratory secretions, the vaccinated individuals may be having 100. And that 100 might not be enough to transmit the infection. But with variants, like the British variant, especially with the Indian variant, because you have much higher viral loads, even if you're vaccinated, you can transmit. Okay, so it's transmission and reduction in the viral loads in your respiratory secretions is relative. So it does reduce transmission, but it depends on the variant, and it doesn't completely reduce transmission. It does, but you can't. That's not what it should be used for. Okay, related to the gap between two doses. What is the acceptable gap between two doses of AstraZeneca? It is 12 weeks. 12 weeks is good if you have the original variant or the UK variant. But if you have the Indian variant, then the gap between the two doses of 12 weeks would not be, that would be a dangerous thing to have. Is the mechanism by which the vaccine act has something to do with the efficacy vaccine? Sorry, I'm not very clear with that question. If the person can rephrase that question, okay? Okay, can the vaccine be mixed and matched? I think I answered that question. And does natural infections or vaccines give lifelong immunity? Okay, to answer that question, so lifelong immunity. So we don't know lifelong immunity. We've only had it around for a while. But I can talk about people who had COVID in 2020 March, okay, when we initially had it. So we got down some people who had COVID in 2020 March and looked at their antibody and T-cell responses in 2021 March, and they had very good antibody responses, including high levels of neutralizing antibodies and T-cell responses. There was not even a drop in the levels of neutralizing antibodies from March 2020, that would be end of March 2020 to March 2021. But those are the people who had moderate or severe COVID. People who had asymptomatic COVID lost their antibodies very fast. But one important thing, again, I would like to highlight here. Now, all of you have had the hepatitis B vaccine. And after some time, when you look at hepatitis B antibody titers, I mean, they are very low, or some people don't have it, but they're still protected, and that's because they have memory B cells. So, which are able to very rapidly get activated and produce the right type of antibodies. So just because you have low levels of antibodies, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not protected. So there are, and there's a thing called mucosal immunity, okay, which you can't measure by doing a blood test, which is there are a lot of different things, and it's difficult to actually quantify. So there are a lot of things that come into play when you're talking about this. Okay. Can't a strict lockdown of 2 weeks or 4 weeks control the current situation? Okay, I mean, is it beyond control? So that is a very complex question, whether 2 weeks or 4 weeks. Let me answer in this way. Okay, so if you have weeds in your garden, okay, when you have a few weeds, it's easy to pull them out. When you have lots and lots of weeds, then you have to take drastic measures. And even after drastic measures, if you have lots and lots of weeds, then drastic measures might not also work. So whether 2 weeks or 4 weeks lockdown works depends on the extent of the spread in the community. And right now, with the numbers, as I just showed you earlier, we don't know how widespread it is, because we are just looking at numbers. Okay, I mean, number of cases every day. So with just looking at number of cases, we can't predict where the epidemic is moving. We have to look at the number of new cases, and in the sense where we are seeing the number of new cases, whether they are like family members who are testing positive. So without that data, we can't answer that question. So I think if you can ask that question from epidemiologists, a person who has that data, because they would be able to, I don't know if anybody has the data, mind you, would be able to answer the question. Okay. Given that we will take a considerable amount of time to achieve significant percent of vaccination from the current 8%, what are the alternative precautions we should take to minimize the load on the medical response force, assuming vaccination program doesn't speed up? Home quarantine solutions. Yes. So home quarantine solutions for asymptomatic people is an important thing, I believe. I think the clinicians, like the College of Physicians, including people like Dr. Malavige, the College of Internal Medicine, they have developed guidelines, and they have been trying to push this forward to have a home monitoring system. I think they can get the help of, I mean, we have lots and lots of medical students and graduates out there who could be in call centers monitoring these patients and taking them into hospital on time. So that is an important option. And of course, I think the vaccination program will speed up. I'm optimistic. I'm very optimistic. So I'm somebody who always sees that we can still get out of it and things will move into a positive side. So I think, yes, our vaccination, and we are getting 1 million next week and 1 million the week after. So I think I'm quite hopeful. So despite all the disasters that Sri Lanka is facing right now. Okay, so can the terms antigenic drift and antigenic shift be applied to COVID? Antigenic shift will not happen, because that is like complete recombination. Shift, drift, that may happen. I mean, that is basically what we are seeing right now. I mean, not really a drift. In that case, we are seeing variants, but still the vaccines are working. So I think we are safe currently. Oh, what can we say about the efficacy of vaccines on pregnant females? So the trials are being conducted in several countries on mRNA and the AstraZeneca vaccines in pregnant females. So the data is not out there, but pregnancy, I mean, there shouldn't be any difference in pregnant females compared to other people. True that they are a little bit more immunosuppressed than non-pregnant females because of their pregnancy situation, but it would be very important to immunize them because they are at high risk of developing severe COVID. And it's not just COVID. I mean, a lot of viral infections like dengue, chickenpox, everything is influenza, everything is more severe in pregnant females than not pregnant. Okay, is it necessary to vaccinate the patients who had infection previously? Okay, so a lot of people have been doing studies about this, and including us. So studies have shown that people who have had previous infection, one dose is adequate. And even with our data, we can see that with just one dose, their neutralizing antibody responses really go up drastically to the highest levels. So after one dose in infected people, they seem to be doing fine. Even in the WHO recent document, they have sort of spoken about this. What are your advice regarding supportive medications which are commonly prescribed in the symptoms? Vitamin C. I don't know about vitamin C. Azithromycin, steam in the budesonide, and I mean there's some evidence for budesonide in certain patients. Steam inhalation, there is no evidence for steam inhalation. I don't understand how it works. I mean, there's no reason for it to work. Vitamin C, there is no data. Azithromycin, again, I think it's best to ask some physician also. I'm not the best person to sort of answer this question, but as far as steam inhalation goes, that doesn't work. I mean, there's no reason for it to work. Okay, so, are there any reported South African cases in Sri Lanka? So, not in the community, but in the quarantine facilities, yes. I think we have had 4 or 5, something like that, in quarantine facilities. But so far, we are not seeing in the community. Okay, a relevant question. Medical students have received both doses of AstraZeneca. What is the risk of carrying the infection home from clinicals and infecting family members who have received either only one dose or either of AstraZeneca or Sinopharm? So, as of now, in Colombo, as of yesterday, we are only seeing the UK variant. And the reason is, in the UK variant, it gives a characteristic S-drop in the PCRs that we are using. So even in the CMC area, everywhere, we are just seeing the UK variant. So you can infect people at home. So after one dose of AstraZeneca, you do have good protection against the UK variant. But now, if it's after 12 weeks, we don't know. You see, if the protection is still there against the UK variant. And Sinopharm, people have only had one dose. So I don't think with one dose of Sinopharm, you can get protected. So I'll be really honest. You can take the infection home unknowingly after 2 doses. And yes, you can infect people at home. Is actually a lockdown needed, as we are going to be infected roughly within the next year when considering the disease pattern. Okay, this is why a lockdown is needed. True that I just said that all of us are going to get infected within the next year, but that's after you get vaccinated, right? I mean, so all of you are fine, you are vaccinated. So if you get infected, you're going to be okay. But I'm talking about the rest of the population out there who have not been vaccinated. And if they get infected, I mean, there are a lot of old people with comorbidities, they are not going to be fine. So this is why we need to sort of bring things down a little bit so that the health sector can manage these patients. So how many weeks should a medical student wait for the second dose after the vaccine to start clinical trials? Not clinical trials, clinicals. I mean, after 2 weeks, the studies have shown after 2 weeks, after the second dose, you're protected. That is the what is shown in clinical trials. Where do you think intermittent lockdowns will have to be done many times in future? Well, as I said, lockdowns and all these things, it depends on the, right now we are not in a, we are in a bad situation. I mean, I just showed you the data. Although our case numbers are like static and like that, our positivity rate is going up like that, right? I mean, it's going in a J-shaped curve. So without the data about who is getting the infection, it's difficult to comment about how long, intermittent, all these lockdowns. What about taking tablets like vitamin C, cod liver oil daily as an immune booster? So if you have vitamin D deficiency, taking vitamin D helps. Okay, but if you're not vitamin D deficient, vitamin D doesn't help. But as medical students, because you are not out in the sun doing paddy farming or something like that, I think taking a bit of vitamin D intermittently would help you. Vitamin C, of course, there doesn't seem to be any benefit. I would suggest eat fruits, because apart from just vitamin C and all these things, getting it naturally, you get a lot of other micronutrients. And one important thing we are forgetting here is the importance of the microbiome. You see, and the microbes in your gut and elsewhere, which actually provide a lot of mucosal immunity. So it's good to feed them as well. So it's good to eat the right food to feed your bacteria. It's good to give them good nutrition. So is there a need to vaccinate those who have already been infected with COVID and cured? Yes, it is important to vaccinate, because we have seen that after just one dose, their neutralizing antibodies go up. So giving one dose would be good. What about the efficacy of the AstraZeneca versus Sinopharm vaccines? They're comparable. AstraZeneca and Sinopharm vaccines, the clinical trial data show that they have comparable efficacy. Okay, where in the virus originated in China? So obviously, yes, the virus originated in China. Whether it's a lab leak or whether it is an actual natural phenomenon, we don't know. Maybe we will know one day, but right now we don't know. And I think knowing that is not going to change anything right now, okay, because what has happened has happened. So I think we have to get out of the mess first before finding out who is responsible and what. Okay, who are absolute contraindications for vaccination? Absolute contraindications are people who have allergies to the components of the vaccines. Okay, not people who have allergies in random, not people who have allergic rhinitis, asthma, food allergies, drug allergies, you name it, whatever allergy, but just people who have allergies to the components of the vaccines. Okay, so those are absolute contraindications. And a person get infected with the Indian variant after who get infected with the COVID, with the UK variant. Yes, I mean, a person can get the infection with the Indian variant after the UK variant, but I don't think it can happen immediately, because after getting a natural infection, you do have immunity for at least 6 months. So not within the 6 months, but later years. So antibody-dependent enhancement during secondary infection, as seen in dengue, has not seen to happen as yet. Okay, whether we can see whether things will change in the future, unlikely, because this antibody-dependent enhancement in COVID is not the same mechanism that happens in dengue. It's a completely different story. In a country like Sri Lanka, selective vaccination of elderly and high-risk population initially is advisable and feasible. Do you agree with that understanding? Yes, I do, and I hope it is implemented. Is there a shortage of the second dose of vaccine in Sri Lanka? Yes, there is. This is why people are waiting. I believe that the US is going to gift us with some vaccine, so that problem is solved, I hope. So just moringa and herbals effective against immune boosting. So now in this immune boosting, now there is no such thing called immune boosting. You want your immune system to work well, and when you have certain comorbidities like diabetes or I don't know, hypertension, heart, because of those things, your immune system is not working in optimum level. Or you could be taking, I don't know, certain cancer medications, steroids, then your immune system doesn't work properly. So then you would be more prone to get severe COVID. But people who have a natural, normally functioning immune system, you can't boost it by taking various food items. Okay. How long does immunity of vaccines last? We don't know. But from the clinical trial evidence coming now, because the clinical trial started last August, the clinical trial data show that vaccine-induced immunity does last beyond 6 months. Okay. Could this COVID be a bio war attempt and accidental release? I don't know whether it's, I don't think it's a bio war attempt. Accidental release, I mean, I don't know whether it's, I don't think it's bio war. Accidental release, I don't know. Can we get other vaccinations like tetanus following the AstraZeneca vaccine? Yes, you can, but you have to keep a gap of 4 weeks. So the golden rule is keep a gap of 4 weeks between vaccines. But if you need an emergency vaccine, so let's say you had the AstraZeneca vaccine today and you are bitten by a dog, of course you go for the rabies vaccine. There's no question about it because rabies has 100% mortality. Should someone get infected with someone who get infected with COVID get the vaccine? We answered that. Why does it need to have at least 2 weeks gap between 2 vaccines? Okay, that's because of immune interference. So you want, once you get a vaccine, you want the immune response to that vaccine come on very well before you give another vaccine and interfere the immune responses between the 2 vaccines. Can we use ACE2 agonist as treatment for COVID? No, we can't because the ACE2 pathways, downstream signaling pathways, act on a lot of interferon signaling. So by trying to mess around with the ACE2 receptor, you are going to mess around with a lot of interferon signaling pathways, which can have a lot of detrimental immune effects. So not a good idea. In your opinion, when can medical students go back for clinicals? I thought they were back at clinicals. When do medical students? I don't know. I thought they were back at clinicals. This was my understanding. Maybe I was wrong. Okay, if you could spare a few minutes to fill out the feedback form. Okay, so that is for the feedback form, it's not for me. Okay, so I think I have finished all my questions. Okay.
Thank you so much, madam. And with that, we would like to conclude today's session. I would like to first and foremost thank Professor Neelika Malavige for being present here today and for her brilliant talk on mutations, variations, and making sense of the madness. Good evening to you all. Stay safe and see you again.